And how is everybody doing today? Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Stash. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but I've got something I really want to share with you today, and it's about time I finally got to it. Today I will be sharing this. Yes, I was really thrilled when I got this for the first time, and don't get any better than that. This is Takom's 1/35th scale Merkava Mk.I. This is a nice welcome kit. It's the first all-new Merkava Mk.I kit in 30 years, actually. Merkava. Takom is a new armor company, 1/35th scale. They actually been making a lot of armor subjects that people have been clamoring for, like the Chieftain, the Leopard 1, Leopard 1 series, a couple other things. And one of the subjects they tackled was the early Merkava kits. I'll give you a brief history on the Merkava main battle tank. Now, the Merkava is a Israeli designed main battle tank. It was a result of lessons learned from both the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War, and they didn't want to be stuck in that position again. I recommend reading up about both wars and results of why they built the Merkava tank. And if I'm correct, Merkava translated in Hebrew means chariot, which is basically the chariot of Israel. So Merkava is actually different as compared to most main battle tanks. With Israeli thought during battle in the Middle East, survivability was one. You could always get another tank, but the tank crew means more than anything. So survivability was first. It was followed up by firepower, and then finally maneuverability and speed. Now, the other two, that last isn't so much necessary when you're battling in the Middle East, with good reason. You're basically out in the open field, as compared to like Europe or or even Vietnam. So the tank was built differently as compared. The engine was put in the front instead of the rear, like it usually is. There is actually an access hatch on the rear of the Merkava. Some say it's for additional troops, but it could also be for getting casualties out of the battlefield or providing cover, so on and so forth, or making it easier to reload the tank with ammo. Either way, it's a pretty innovative concept, and it was designed and built during the 70s, made its debut during 1982 during Operation Peace for Galilee, which is basically up against Syria and the PLO. And the Merkava proved its worth. I mean, the gun itself is a 105mm gun. Same gun used by the M60, used by the Centurion, which Israel also had stocks of at the time. And yeah, it proved to be a very tough tank, and it actually proved to be a really good tank. But keep this in mind, even though it's not intended for battle in Europe, you got to keep in mind it's a different theater, different mindset, different battle. Otherwise, it's a great tank. And it was succeeded by the Mark II, which had some incremental improvements like additional armor, tank thermal sighting, which is similar to the Abrams, the Challenger, and so on. Then you had the Mark III, which was a totally different redesign of the same basis in the Mark IV. And now the Mark Is and the Mark IIs are either being converted to APCs, armor recovery vehicles, or they're being upgraded, and they're all in the reserves now. The earlier marks are in the reserves, the later marks, they're in the frontline service. But it's proven itself not only be a really good tank, but perfect for Israel. So, enough of that. You want to know more about it? I recommend looking it up online or getting books on the Merkava. Now onto the kit. In 1/35th scale, even though the later marks were covered, there was only two model manufacturers that did the Mark I and the Mark II. And they're basically the same kit, save for parts specific for the Mark I and the Mark II. One was Tamiya, which first came out in the 80s, and then Academy, which came out in the late 80s, early 90s. They're both really nice kits. You know, Tamiya, typical Tamiya quality, generally accurate, good research, well done, but considering that more and more information is coming out a little at a time, it turns out the kit is a little dated. But you can always scratch build things, you can always get aftermarket stuff. Same thing with the Mark II. As a matter of fact, a company called Legend Productions out of Korea actually have some update sets for the Academy Merkava Mark II. Like, you could build it as Mark IIB, Mark IIC, and a Mark IID, or you could do it all new. Mark I, you're going to have to do your own research and scratch build and stuff, and cannibalize. Nothing you can do about that. And it's been a while since they put them out. I mean, granted, the 3 and the 4 is more modern, so it's more covered. Like, Academy first came out with 3, then it came out with the Mark IV, as well as Meng, Hobby Boss, I think a couple others. I'm not too sure about it. And sadly, the Mark I and Mark II were largely ignored, which was kind of a shame. But the Tamiya and the Academy kit were still good starting points, especially if you wanted to detail it and fix it up and stuff. They were generally accurate. It's just some things they just got to add. But so it goes in the modeling world, and no kit is perfect. Well, to the rescue, Takom mentioned they were making both the early Merkava and Mark I and Mark II kits. Everybody got excited. I got excited. I was like, yay! Sorry, I'm like a little kid at heart when it comes to that stuff. And one of my favorite armor subjects is Israeli. And I saw it finally. It finally came out. Takom came out with it. I was like, oh, I got to get my hands on that. And I did. So it's in my hands. So what's in the box? Let's get a look. We're going to start off with the road wheel assemblies here. The first thing I noticed about the Takom kit, we'll show this in a little bit, is the hull itself. The hull's a little more involved. It's not like the Tamiya kit where it's just basic, you only know so much. It's actually much more involved on this one. Matter of fact, the Takom kit itself is way more involved. I mean, it's still the same basis, but, you know, it's more parts. And I've heard a lot of good things about Takom, like the quality, the detail, and a few other things. But like I said, the whole detail is a lot more involved, a lot more research. And I don't expect this to be 100% accurate because you think national security is rough here. Israel is even worse. There's only so much you can do in getting a look at any of Israel's main battle tanks, even if it's from Britain or the United States, because there's a lot of things that are considered no-nos by the Israeli censors. And it's perfectly understandably why. So, you know, it's a long story. So that was the hull. Now we're going to move on to the upper hull section. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as it's similar to the lower hull. It's kind of similar to the Tamiya, but it's different. This is the upper hull here. As you can tell, it's actually one piece. I mean, of course, you're going to be adding more parts on. Here's the upper half of the turret. Separate hatches, different. I think there's a good reason for it. I think it's a little much, but on the other half, it's understandable. But it looks really, really good. I mean, this is actually good quality stuff. As I said before, I've heard a lot of good things about Takom, and I do question Takom's approach in engineering and everything, but man, of course, it's going to require more work, more cleanup, actually. Not so much work, but cleanup. But I heard if you clean it up just right, you won't need any filler, won't be any hassles. So I'm actually looking forward to it, and it's interesting. So here's the rest of the parts you've got. This is for the barrel, to hold the barrel in place, more for the suspension. Here's the panels for the upper turret. Actually, this shows the interior and the exterior of the turret. I think some of the parts are specific for like other releases, because they did release a different version of, well, Takom did, released another version of the Mark I, which is the hybrid, which has parts from the Mark II, like the necessary parts, like different side skirts, probably the tracks, and a couple other upgrades like smoke grenade launchers and the like. But you can tell, I mean, this is very, very involved. The details are more crisp. There's many more, but if you're patient, you take your time, clean up everything accordingly, I think everything's going to fit just fine. There's your 50 caliber. There is... No, that's the 50 caliber. I think that's just the FN right there. The FN right there. There's your 50 caliber here. They got two different options. No, this is actually put in two pieces, as you see right here. This is actually a jig right here, in case you're wondering. That's a jig for the front sprocket. I'll explain that a little bit later, because this isn't the only one, the only jig that's provided. I showed you the other hull. Here's another jig. I'll explain that also. Here's the road wheel section, as well as the suspension. Now, this is all here. This is road wheel. This is the original Mark I road wheels. There's spacers here. I will talk about that in a little bit. Main gear sprockets, of course. The front wheel sprockets, rear sprockets. We got the suspension, which is over here. return rollers. We've got covers for the main wheels, the main spokes and the hubs. Some extra track to hang on your Merkava. Some clips, access panels. One of those hatches to cover clear parts. Like I said, this is a lot more involved because I'll explain after. Of course, the barrel, the side skirts, a couple of cans. Here's some more parts for the rear turret. You also have, here's the side skirts here. And of course, well, there's your barrel. And then of course, there's the hatch for the turret. And this looks, you can tell here, looks really, really promising. And, I mean, like I said, it looks a little more involved, a little more complex, but it looks really, really promising. And I'm very familiar with armor kits, and every time I look at something that looks challenging, first thing crosses my mind is challenge accepted. So this shouldn't be a problem. And of course, bottom half of the turret, right here. Here is the basket. Now, if you noticed, this is the basket. Now, the Mark 1, on the Mark 1, check, this is where you got to check everything. I'm going to point everything out. You notice there's the ball chain skirt. This was actually added. Most of the people say it was added after Peace for Galilee, but it was actually added to the most important Merkava tank force units that were actually in the fight in Beirut. I think Beirut. I'm not sure. But they added this ball and chain skirt, and it was a very low-tech answer to a very major problem, and it works beautifully. The rear of the turret actually was a shot trap considered for like get up against anti-tank missiles, RPG-7 rockets, and it could jam the turret. So, simple solution: ball and chain skirt under the turret basket. It disrupts the RPG-7 itself, and it's a very simple solution, and it's very effective. And of course, add-on armor pieces. We're familiar with the Mark 1. And we'll go back to a couple other things. Now, I mentioned about the jig on the one jig. I can find it, don't know where it is. But we'll talk about the jig for the lower turret, for the running gear. Now, the reason why they have this is very, very simple. This is actually link and length track. I have mixed feelings about link and length track. Some of it works. Some of it worked beautifully. Some of it was a real nightmare to deal with. And depending on, like, SE did link and length track. It's supposed to be for a more realistic look, but sometimes it can be difficult to assemble. Sometimes it's just a pain in the butt to just line up and stuff. And same thing, Dragon models have done the same thing. This was before the challenge of individual track links. And like I said, I've got mixed feelings with that. 1/72nd scale, a lot of companies did the link and length, which made more sense. But in 1/35th, even though it makes for more realistic, it can be difficult to assemble. You just gotta know, and I can actually say this from experience. Try doing that with Dragon's M1 original release, M1A1 Abrams kit, the tracks. They just fought me every step of the way. I just ended up buying an AFV Club track set, which made life a lot easier. Yeah, there was many, many more tracks to put together, but it was still easier than their link and length set. So, but this one looks like it's a lot easier. And I could understand why they did this. One, this is the track in the Merkava doesn't have rubber pads, so it's all metal. They do make aftermarket tracks like this, but this makes more sense, especially cost-wise and engineering-wise. That's why they have the jig, which is a really, really good thing. The jig helps align it. You just basically run your track on here, set it up, let it dry, take it off, actually put it on the running gear. Less hassle, less fuss. Problem solved. I like that idea. So I tip my hat to Takom for that. And the other one, if I can find it, I have it running through everything like a Rottweiler on caffeine, which there's a nice visual for you. Rottweiler on caffeine just bouncing around without its tail. The other one that they did was the jig for it was to drill holes. Well, I don't know where I put it. Oh well. reason for the jig is so, it's right here in front of me the whole time. Reason for this is so you could put it on the front sprocket and drill holes. You're supposed to use like a certain size millimeter drill bit, drill the holes, because the actual sprockets have holes in them, and I can understand why they didn't add the holes. That would be more expensive and it'd be more complex. So they added that. You drill the holes, take your time, of course, and it worked. And apparently, it'll work very, very effectively. So, which is what you want. This is not a beginner's kit, of course. Now, to my eyes, it's perfect for beginners. So you just take your time, put it together, problem solved. The spacers here actually go for the inside of the tires and the road wheel rims and the actual road wheels themselves. And I'll show you the instructions soon after. Like I said, it's a little more complex, a little more involved, but it looks very, very promising. It looks easy to deal with. I mean, I'm no stranger to that stuff. And after that, we'll move on to the extras. This bothers me, mainly because I would rather paint the glass on. A couple of companies have been starting to do this as of late, the clear parts. I think Meng did, I think High Boss, Takom does this. Heller did it with their Leclerc kit. This bothers me to a degree because this is just much more masking than I need necessary. But however, if you know how to paint, if you know how to use tape and stuff, this actually helps. It'll actually add some realism and depth into it because there really isn't an interior for this kit. But I'm sure somebody's going to be brave enough and put out an aftermarket and resin interior set if they can get the photos and stuff. Good luck on that. Otherwise, I do feel they're unnecessary, but they look like they work well, so I can't knock them for it. I really can't. I don't think anybody will notice a difference once you put a primer coat on and then you spray the actual base color. So just make sure you cover the clear spots. You're in good shape. Okay, what else? Now, the other cool part about this is the extras they added. Of course, you got your decal sheet from Takom. I got to look at the decal sheet. It's basic. See for a second while I pop this open. I'm like a little kid right now. I actually ran through this thing before I finally got the time to make a video of it. Decals are right here. They seem well printed. They seem opaque. They seem thin and in register. They're all light, so really isn't going to make much of a difference. And I haven't heard anything bad about Takom's decals. I'm just hoping that they don't shatter if I put them in the water. Matter of fact, there you go. There's the decals right there. And it really wasn't that much to the Merkava markings. They're pretty simple. Yeah. So we got that. The other interesting part is the extra parts is provides a braided copper tow cable, which is I've never dealt with braided copper. I always bought like yarn from a craft store to simulate braided cable, which works for me. And I just threw in some super glue, took the ends and left it at that. And I let the paint stiffen up I painted the braided the yarn, the twine, I should say. But this looks solid. It looks rugged. Of course, you can get away with a paint coat. And it don't look like it frays easily, so, you do your measurements, find them where they are, glue them into the ends where they're supposed to go for the cables. And they're also rugged. They're flimsy enough to be cooperative, but they're also rugged enough where they won't fall apart on you. They'll actually be cooperative. Piece of pewter. I suspect it's lead, but don't matter. This is for actually to simulate the canvas parts for like the numbers on the turret basket. I usually use masking tape or a piece of foil, but this actually, if you want to try it out, give it a shot. I might use it. I might actually try it because it might make life a little bit easier. Might give a more realistic effect since I'm building a static display model. So I really give this a try. If you're not happy with it, you can always go with foil or you can go with tape, like a masking tape of sorts. And of course, photo etch. This is for the basket, the bottom of the basket. This is for the rear end of the escape hatch. And which is pretty cool. It really isn't that much, so it's not as complex as you would fear it would be. But you never know. And if you don't, and I was actually checking the parts. I really have no choice but to use basket and and that piece. So it's no big deal. So we're done with that. And Here's the instructions. This is cool. These are actually really simple instructions. This is your parts layout, decals, like, and of course it gives you the instructions. The Chinese English translation isn't that great. This is 3D CAD, as you can see here. Now, if you notice up here, talks about the jig. That talks about the jig that I was talking about. It shows everything from here, as you can see. Instructions are very well. They're clear, they're concise, everything seems easy to follow, as you can tell right here. And like I said, it's AutoCAD 3D. I'm thumbing through everything, and it goes right to this. Now, if you're going to be building an early Merkava Mk.I, always cut off the ball and chain skirt. And I did forget to mention about this kit. It doesn't have the anti-slip texture, but to be fair, from what I understand from research, the anti-slip texture wasn't added until midway through Piece for Galilee or the most important tank units. So do your research accordingly. Make sure you do that. And you can leave it off, or if you want, you can add it on. There is ways of doing it there's ways of adding the anti-slip texture. Do your research and figure out what works best for you. And of course, this is where right here, this is where you use the pewter. And the other photo I showed you of the cable. And of course the basket. This is my big complaint. This is what I was talking about, Mark I Hybrid, by the way. I might actually get this. My biggest gripe about this is the fact that they tell you to use MIG ammo paint. This is my problem. I've always had this problem. Unless it's Tamiya or other companies, I really wish some companies would use a cross-reference chart, because what if you don't have the MIG ammo paint or AK interactive paint? You're going to have to do your research, and even then, the actual color of the Israeli armor they're provided might not be totally accurate. Especially from photo to photo, tank to tank. So you got to do your research accordingly. Most of us already know there's a lot of stuff available. You got Vallejo, you have testers, if you could find it. At least they got it in enamel, not in acrylic. Like you said, Vallejo makes a model air. Make the model air version of the Israeli color. But it would have been nice for Takom to give a cross-reference chart. If Hobby Boss, Trumpeter, and if I remember, not Meng, and Kinetic can do that, I think Takom could have done it too. But to be fair, this is just the way it goes. But if you're no stranger to this stuff, you can always do your research and cross-reference accordingly. Now, I will say this. This is a really, really nice kit. It really is. Is it better than a Tamiya? Yes. But you got to keep in mind, this kit is the first one built in over 30 years. So don't throw away your Tamiya kit or your Academy kit. You should pass them on to whoever's just starting into armor, because they're ideal for beginners. And I do really, really recommend them. So this is what I got for now. I will talk to you guys again soon. Happy modeling. Take it easy. Have fun.